And yeah, let's get started. Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining us on this rainy afternoon. For those of us who are joining us from California, I just heard that it is not raining where our speakers are sitting right now. They're enjoying a nice sunny afternoon. We have about 40 people registered for the session today, so we're going to wait for a few more of you to join us. My name is Ana Lucia Cordova. I'm the Director of Strategic Initiatives and Research Funding at Office of Research. And one of the activities that our team engages on is cultivating and growing our partnerships with the national labs. And as part of that, we like to host some of these webinars where we give some of you an opportunity to learn a little bit more about the research that happens at the national labs, but also how you might be able to collaborate with investigators, access opportunities if you're a graduate student or a postdoc, and just get an overall, we call it like National Labs 101. So this afternoon, we have our colleagues from Los Alamos National Lab. I'm just going to provide very brief introductions for our speakers, and then they'll tell you a little bit more about what they do as they go over the presentation. A couple of housekeeping items before we get started. Please keep your microphone muted so we can just keep the background noise low. And then I recommend that you keep your video off as we go through the presentation so you get like a little bit better quality like bandwidth. And once we hit the Q&A session, we welcome everyone to turn their videos back on so we can get more of a one-on-one presence. So with that, I'm very happy to welcome today Dr. Holly Trelue, who is the coordinator of the Los Alamos National Laboratory Engineering Leadership Council and also the leader of the Engineering Institute. We'll also have with us Scarlett Widgeon-Peisner, who is a scientist at Los Alamos National Lab, and her work focuses on fuels research and material science and technology. We will also have Alina Deshpande, whose work focuses on biomedical sciences, and she does a lot of work within the biosciences. She's a deputy division leader within the biosciences division at the lab. We will hear from Kester Clark, who is a group leader specializing in material science under extreme conditions. We have a lot of people who work on that here on campus. And we'll also hear from Antonia Sanders, who's a program manager for the postdoc program. And I believe she's going to join us a little bit later. As a reminder, this session is going to go through 1:45 to allow for you to ask all the questions that you have. We are recording the session, so you'll have access to the presentations again if you want to revisit some of the information. And with that, I'm going to pass it on to Holly to get us started with our one-on-one session this afternoon.
All right, thank you very much. I am, as Ana Lucia mentioned, Holly Trelue from Los Alamos. We have one additional speaker who is Angelica Lopez from our Student Programs Office. So we will start off today by talking about some of the technical work that we do here at Los Alamos, and then we will go into some more of the logistics about students' programs and postdoc programs. So for you students who are on, if you will stick it out to the end, we will have more information about how you can apply for positions here at the lab. But we wanted to start with some of the work that we do and some of our subject matter experts who will talk about those specific topics. So with that, I'm going to share my screen to give us some pictures as well as words as we're talking along. So here at Los Alamos, first of all, let me know if you cannot see the screen. Otherwise, I'm going to assume I'm going to keep talking. I'm going to keep it in this mode because we found this works just a little bit better. So we at Los Alamos work on solving some of our national security challenges, which is very fundamental to some of the things that are important for our country. So what we have focused on at Los Alamos is 80 years of serving the nation. So in 1943, Los Alamos National Laboratory was founded with a single urgent purpose, which was to build an atomic bomb. And today, LANL focuses on maintaining a strategic nuclear deterrent that also helps to protect the nation's security. So seen here, we have some glove box workers, and they're manipulating some materials inside a glove box. That is one of the things that we do here at LANL, but we also do a lot of other things. So we help detect nuclear weapons and devices. We help promote cooperation and diplomacy, both in nation and worldwide topics. We help limit arms control and the spread of nuclear materials, technology, and expertise. And in general, we help advance the frontiers of science and engineering and have lots of great, exciting topics all across the US nuclear security enterprise. So just to give you a little bit of information about what does that mean, what is the nuclear security enterprise? That is comprised of a variety of national laboratories and test sites. So LANL is shown here on the top left, but there are also other laboratories, Lawrence Livermore National Lab in California, the Nevada National Security Site, just south and east of that in Nevada above Las Vegas. We have Sandia National Laboratories, which is located in Albuquerque. There are production complexes in Kansas City, in Pantex. We have the Savannah River site, and then we have the Y-12 National Security Complex in Tennessee. And so this is just one of the key parts that we have overall in the nuclear security enterprise, and Los Alamos is a portion of that. So the lab agenda of Los Alamos National Laboratory outlines some of our priorities, which ranges from having a nuclear deterrent, threat reduction, trustworthy operations, and technical leadership. And what does this mean? It means that we lead the nation in evaluating, developing, and assuring ways to help identify and prevent problems. So this is nuclear weapons in some ways, but also other types of things. We work on threat reduction to be able to anticipate persistent and emerging threats to global security. So we help develop and deploy tools to detect, deter, and respond proactively to threat reductions. We also have trustworthy operations. So we're consistently demonstrated and recognized by many stakeholders for being able to come up with ways to operate lots of different experimental facilities and to be able to have different types of research that is recognized all over the nation for being very state of the art. We also have technical leadership. So we help deliver scientific discoveries and technical breakthroughs to advance relevant research frontiers and to anticipate emerging national security risks. So we do lots of exciting different types of research and development to be able to give us new ideas and innovative topics to help all sorts of missions. So what is our mission? To help solve national security challenges through simultaneous excellence. To our vision to be entrusted by our nation, to be emulated by peers, and to be respected by the world. And what is the culture of how we do that is we want to make sure that how we do our work is important as what kind of work that we do. And we implement this through our values, which is service, integrity, teamwork, and excellence. We also make sure that we modernize our site to help attract lots of new workforce and to retain the workforce that we have. So we want to have breaking ground in lots of new types of construction and other areas so that we have new types of buildings. We have new cell towers to make sure that we're in the modern world and significantly improve our 40 square mile campus. So even though we are in a small town in northern New Mexico, we do have a very widespread area on several plateaus in the community. Now, the work also positively impacts the area's economy. So we have a large portion of people who commute kind of all over northern New Mexico. We have areas in Santa Fe, Espanola, Pojoaque, which are all northern communities nearby. And we also do lots of community events like science, technology, engineering, mathematics, education, and teacher developments. And we also help to directly and indirectly create lots of jobs in the state, which helps lots of our communities. And so here's some pictures of some of the things that we do and some of the offices that are nearby. We also helped commit to the environment and some of the nearby communities. So we work with the Pueblos and other local entities to help preserve resources, comply with state and federal requirements, and help prevent pollution. So we have an environmental group that really works to make sure we maintain some of the wildlife, air, and water, and also have pipeline programs with schools across the northern part of the state. We have employees that help donate to local giving programs. And so that we make sure that those donations stay within the community so that we can help build and grow and help and make sure that we have students nearby that can help have good educations in the STEM and have LANL hosted events and help grow our the knowledge that we have in science and technology and engineering as a whole. And so here are some examples of how we do that. LANL's work as a whole also helps the US stay competitive in a shifting geopolitical landscape. And hopefully some of you saw some of the movies that came out. J. Robert Oppenheimer is one of our founders and has a lot of quotes about how we do science and engineering and says there's must be no barriers for freedom of inquiry. There's no place for dogma in science. The scientist is free and must be free to ask questions, no doubt any assertion, to seek for evidence and correct any errors. So we try to live by some of the principles that our founders gave and help maintain a high quality of work and some of the things that we do here at LANL. Now I have some numbers on here, and these may not be our most current numbers because I had this presentation from a year or two ago, but this is kind of the size of the site, the number of people who work at LANL, some of the groups, some of the procurements, the salaries, and those types of things. Here also are some pictures of our surrounding area. So those of you from California you are near some of our other wildlife in the mountains, but also near the beaches. We don't have beaches here in New Mexico, except on our lakes, but we do have a lot of wildlife and mountains. We're at about 7,000 feet. And so we do have ski areas, we have mountain biking, we have hiking, and we have green chilies, which is exciting. We also have a lot of local wildlife and pueblos and other types of things that you can explore some of our environmentally rich locations. Here's some of the benefits that we offer for staff in particular who will come to the lab. And this has changed probably a little bit over the last year or two, but I just wanted to give you an example of some of the things that if you came to work here as a staff member that you can come to expect. And since I am from the Engineering Institute, I wanted to start with a little bit of information about engineering at LANL, and then I'm going to pass this off to some of my colleagues who will talk to you more about the science. So we have about 3,500 people with engineering degrees here at Los Alamos, and we have state-of-the-art missions and research that will require people to build and design these kind of foundation blocks for all of our facilities and projects to accomplish work. So we have some pretty large experimental facilities here at the lab. We have a mile-long accelerator facility called the Los Alamos Neutron Science Center. We have a large amount of other facilities. We have our plutonium facility and other types of research areas. We help build quite a bit of detectors for nonproliferation. We have robotics, we have magnets, we have materials. We have lots of different types of work that require engineering and some of our science and technology. As far as engineering fields themselves, we do systems engineering, we do national security and science, we do plutonium and advanced materials engineering, we have facilities and operations support, including environmental, we have a civil, electrical, we have mechanical, we have nuclear engineering, and we have computer and software engineering to help provide large amounts of computer and other types of engineering support for all the other types of work that we do here at the laboratory. We've also stood up recently what we call an innovation hub, which is kind of our 3D printers and other design capabilities. So we have lots of different opportunities to be able to come in, let's come up with an idea of what we need to have built, and then you can come into the innovation hub and actually have it printed out. And then we have what we call sprints, which are these opportunities for various people across the lab to come together, try to figure out how they want to build some new type of object or solve the idea for a project. And over the course of a week, they will come up and compete with teams against each other to be able to solve that project. So we show here is we built Lego robots to move through peanut butter, which simulated radioactive waste tanks. And the teams had to try to figure out how to build the best robot to siphon out peanut butter on one side and move it back to the other side. So that was one of our exciting activities. And then I also wanted to bring up, we just had a call come out in the last day or two that is for postdocs that we're looking for exceptional early career PhD scientists and engineers from the University of California schools. And we will have fellows that are going to be selected in up to 6 different research areas that are shown here, including actinide chemistry, multiphysics systems, material science, data and computer science, biomanufacturing, and engineering. And we have a call here that was due at the end of January, and a QR code which we can get to you if you'd like to apply and be able to come work at Los Alamos. This is more the postdoc area. And we will also have information here shortly for students who want to come work similarly on how you can apply for student internships. So at this point, I'm going to pass it off to some of our other scientists to talk, and then we'll talk more about the students programs and postdocs, and then we'll have an opportunity for questions at the end. So next to me here is I have Alina, and I will let her talk next about biosciences.
Thank you so much, Holly. Hello, everyone. Alina Deshpande. My background is in microbiology and biomedical sciences. And as was introduced earlier, I am the Deputy Division Leader for the Bioscience Division. Bioscience at LANL is a very large enterprise that and research programs in bioscience really are housed not just in Bioscience Division, which is kind of the flagship division where bioscience is conducted, but also across the rest of many of the other divisions at LANL, which include our theoretical division, our analytics, intelligence, and technology division, chemistry division, earth and environmental sciences. So it runs the gamut. Bioscience research spans multidisciplinary entities. It covers everything from health sciences to environmental sciences. So there's a large spectrum of bioscience research that is conducted at LANL, of course, all targeted towards the national security mission. So if we go to the next slide, I'm not going to go through every single picture on this slide, but just to give you a flavor of the rich history of bioscience that has been at LANL. We really started with the Manhattan Project that Holly referred to, where life sciences, as it was called at that time, was stood up to understand radiation health effects, understanding the effects of radiation long term as well as short term on the human body. As a result of that, there were several inventions that occurred or several new initiatives that were started at Los Alamos. One of them, in terms of biotechnology, was the invention of the flow cytometer. And so this is a laser based instrument that allows for the detection of fluorescence in single cells as they flow through a stream that is targeted. And a laser, simply speaking, a laser is allowed to shine on these cells. They could be different types of cells, everything from human cells to microbial cells. GenBank, which if you're familiar with the genome sequencing efforts and the first database basically that housed a lot of the genome sequences that had been generated as a result of genome sequencing. GenBank was created here at LANL. We were also very heavily involved in the initiation and then subsequent implementation of the human genome or execution of the human genome project. that was a collaboration with Livermore and Berkeley. Um, and, over the decades, we have developed, LANL has been involved in bioscience research, as I mentioned, that ranges from applications in health sciences to environmental sciences. So we have a lot of technology development as well as fundamental research in the area of host pathogen biology, understanding host responses to biological threats, to chemical threats. And then on the environmental side, we've got fundamental programs that are involved in understanding kind of the carbon cycling in the terrestrial ecosystems, understanding the role of the microbiome more recently in carbon cycling, in plant health resilience, in crop resilience. And so a lot of work has been done in the area of really understanding the composition of various microbiota as they are associated with health as well as in the environment, and then creating computational, databases, creating computational workflows, data analytics for everything that ranges from epidemiological modeling and forecasting for disease to really understanding microbiomes and how they interact with each other and their hosts. So this is just kind of a snapshot of the various things that we have done in biological sciences. If you go to the next slide, our basic mission for bioscience at LANL is really to reduce threats to populations, their way of life, and the global environment. And so we house a lot of different types of capabilities that include computational and wet lab bioscience. You see on the slide a list of the various capabilities which we have. We have a flagship genome center where we've done a lot of work in genomics software development for genomics analysis, as well as training various country partners through our DoD efforts in having their own sequencing labs. So integrated genomics is a big flagship program at LANL. Together with that, we also incorporate a lot of now what we're calling integrated omics, broadly speaking. So this is not just genomics, but it moves into transcriptomics, proteomics, metabolomics, the whole omics vocabulary, if you will. We're very strong in biochemistry, structural biology, a lot of computational as well as wet lab, skill sets as well as tools. More recently, we have been doing a lot of synthetic biology that started off a lot in the area of developing biofuels, but is now also moved into the application of biomanufacturing, which Holly had referred to earlier. And of course, our fundamental sciences in understanding host pathogen interactions and host responses to various threats. So what's listed there at the bottom is then just some of our focus areas of research. As I mentioned, biomanufacturing for biofuels, materials, as well as other precursor products or components. Terrestrial systems, we work a lot in the area of biosurveillance, as well as chem and biothreat science, and then understanding health effects. So if you go to the next slide, I think that's pretty much a repetition of what I already talked about. But just to reiterate, these are kind of our four major areas of scientific research. We build a lot of different types of analytics, as well as have test beds where we provide our services as independent evaluators of various technologies, both computational and wet lab. And then if you go to the next slide, again, this is just to give you a snapshot of bioscience division as of FY24. So this is still a little bit older data, but it just gives you a flavor of kind of our workforce. We'd have bioscience is a fairly young division, and we have a very strong postdoc and student pipeline. So we've got interactions and collaborations with several universities. within the United States. And of course, the UC schools are very strong partners. We have every summer, we have quite a few students that come, both undergrad as well as graduate students. And then, of course, we have a very strong postdoc pipeline. And then finally, just to give you a flavor of our facilities, we have our headquarters, if you will, in the top left corner building that's called Bloom, while and we call it Bloom because we have a greenhouse. The actual acronym, the full form of the acronym is not as glamorous as how Bloom sounds. We have a microbial research lab. So we're spread out over several different buildings within the campus, but each facility has unique capabilities. We have a lot of our microbial research that is, as well as our algal research and our plant work that is done in the building that's called Bloom and the Microbial Research Lab. Our Los Alamos Research Park houses our Genome Center. The building that's called 3585 houses our chemical synthesis and a lot of our chem threat analysis work, as well as our mass spectrometry facility. And then we've got several facilities where we can do more secure work, classified work. Our NMR building houses a lot of our NMR instrumentation. And with that, I think that was the last slide. Thank you for your attention.
All right, next I will pass it off to Kester Clark.
Hi, everyone. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, good. I think there was a question in the chat, and maybe we can just address those at the end. Is that the plan?
Yes, we will do that at the end.
Okay, all right. So I just have a few slides here on material science at LANL in general, and if we can move on to the next slide. One of the things that I think is important to know is that materials has been really at the core of the laboratory since the very beginning. So on the left here is one of the first org charts for the lab from August 1943. So the lab was actually founded maybe in April, where the first people came up to Los Alamos around April 1943. And so this is one of the first org charts. And on this org chart, you can see some famous folks, including Hans Bethe, Edward Teller, Emilio Segre, all physicists. And the name that stood out to me, though, is Smith under metallurgy over here in the chemistry division. And so Cyril Stanley Smith is a pretty famous metallurgist, and he was one of the first directors of the materials, what we would call now a material science group at the laboratory. And an example of the influence that the laboratory has on people is that Cyril Stanley Smith came here as a metallurgist, and then when he left, he went to the University of Chicago and founded an institute for metal study that was supposed to be broad. So he wanted to include interdisciplinary folks, physicists, chemists, in metallurgy and material science, so that we could get different perspectives and diverse viewpoints. And the laboratory really taught him that getting all this interdisciplinary thought together can really help advance things quickly. And in that, he also helped found Acta Materialia, which is one of the premier journals in the material science field, with the same sort of philosophy. So coming out of sort of initial materials studies at the laboratory, where we knew very little about some of the actinide materials that we needed to understand, it has had a huge influence on material science in general and the general material science community, and it's still at the core of the laboratory. Next slide, please. So as far as organizations go, we have a few material science focused organizations. So we have a material science and technology division, and inside that we have 3 groups. Basically, the 3 groups focus on engineered materials, which can be soft materials and high explosives, nuclear materials, and Scarlett will talk a little bit more technically about some of the work that we're doing in MSTA on nuclear materials. So radiation extremes, but also dynamics extremes. So mechanical properties, processing, response kind of relationships. And then nuclear material science is really focused on plutonium material science. Sigma Manufacturing Division focuses on manufacturing science and taking manufacturing processes from low TRL levels, so technology readiness levels, up to levels that we can transfer to production agencies and actually go make things. So coming up with new ideas on how to make things and fabricate and finish things is a big part of Sigma Manufacturing Science. And then we also have materials physics and applications, which includes the Center for Integrated Nanotechnologies, and I'll talk a little bit more about that as a user facility here in a second. And the MAG Lab, which is part of the National High Magnetic Field Laboratory, which there are 3 sites across the country. I'll talk about that a little bit more. Also quantum and material synthesis and integrated devices. So we do structural materials, we do functional materials, we do a really broad range of materials, all focused on national security challenges. Next slide. So as everywhere, material science at LANL really focuses on the materials tetrahedron. So we develop processing techniques. We use a science base to predict structure from processes, and then we use that structure and our understanding of that structure to understand what the properties of those materials are and then what the performance is going to look like. So when we're looking for people to come to Los Alamos and work in our material science fields, we need people with the expertise in experimental characterization and modeling tools to be able to make materials with known performance. So going from sort of an idea to a final material with known performance from the very beginning. And if you go to the next slide, if you look at the UC Davis Material Science and Engineering Department, and you kind of look at the areas of research, they align very much. There's a lot of properties here. There's processing. There's materials under extreme conditions. There's ceramics. There's metals, functional materials. So the overall Venn diagram is pretty overlapped. And so material science at LANL and material science at UC Davis is pretty well aligned. In the next slide, I just wanted to highlight a few user facilities that we have for material science, and I named a couple of these already. One is the Center for Integrated Nanotechnologies. And by user facility, I mean you can write proposals to come and do experiments at Los Alamos. And in the case of the Center for Integrated Nanotechnologies, there's also a site down at Sandia National Laboratory in Albuquerque. So you can write proposals. The example that I'll bring here is we have an ion beam materials laboratory. So if you're looking at radiation effects on materials, you can come and run some of those tests here. There's a much broader spectrum, and you can just go to the CINT website and you can look at all the capabilities that they have there. Holly mentioned earlier in the talk that we have a linear accelerator on the Hill. And so the Los Alamos Neutron Science Center and the Lujan Scattering Center in particular allows us to do diffraction, neutron diffraction on materials. And in particular, the 2 beamlines that I'm going to highlight here are the SMARTS beamline, which is looking at temperature and stress. So understanding how materials change with temperature and stress. And HIPPO beamline, which is looking at orientation, crystallographic orientation of materials as a function of processing and also temperature. So we have a lot of opportunities to come here and do experiments like that. We have a world-class electron microscopy lab, which is also available for students to come and perform microscopy. And then I also mentioned the National High Magnetic Field Lab, which is another user facility where you can come, and if you have experiments and you need to do those experiments in extremely high magnetic fields, they have pulsed magnets where you can do sort of cutting edge material science. And so that's a really good way to interact with the lab from a material science perspective. And then my last slide will highlight some of the paths, and maybe this addresses some of the question in the chat, that we have sort of ways to interact throughout your career with the laboratory, starting all the way from high school and going through a career, right? So here I've highlighted student programs. So we have everything from high school, undergrad, graduate programs. And we also have these unique programs, which are sort of one-year programs that are post-bachelor's or post-master's programs where you can come for a year and see what it's like to be at the lab. And then maybe after a post-bachelor's, you might go and pursue some graduate work and then focus your education on something that you learned at the lab or something that you figured out that you really like to do in your career. So those are really good opportunities for students. Once you have an advanced degree, the postdoc program has a whole bunch of different fellowships and named fellows that we can talk about. Holly again mentioned the Distinguished Fellows or the Director's Fellowships. Those calls are coming out pretty soon. So those are things definitely to look at. And then our job site here, we have really great benefits, and Holly sort of showed some of those earlier. I will say that there's a pretty broad array of career paths. So there are dual career opportunities, even though Los Alamos is in a pretty lightly populated area. So people with multiple technical backgrounds can still find career opportunities, as evidenced by bio and materials science that we've just talked about today. We definitely have a focus on veterans also, and Holly talked about benefits a little bit. Two other things I'd like to highlight. One is graduate fellowships. And so NNSA has a couple of graduate fellowships that are really kind of neat. So there's this laboratory residency graduate fellowship, so up on the top right of the slide there. And then a stockpile stewardship graduate fellowship. So that QR code there will take you to a page where you can access those. Those are fully funded PhD programs. If you get these fellowships, that also incorporate stays at national laboratories. So you can stay at multiple different labs for practicums and or internships for sort of 10 weeks, 12 weeks, those kinds of things a few times during your PhD, and be able to access the facilities and also see what it's like to work at a laboratory and try different laboratories around the NNSA, including Livermore and Sandia, where you might want to pursue a career. So those are really great opportunities. SSGF is more for the beginning of your graduate career. LRGF, I think you can apply a little bit later into your graduate career. And then finally, Holly also showed some pictures of the beautiful mountains and environment around here. And northern New Mexico is truly one of the most beautiful places in the country, and it's a really nice place to live. So I think with that, I'll stop and then allow Scarlett to talk a little bit more about some technical things.
All right, with that, I will pass it off to Scarlett.
Hello, can you all hear me now?
We can hear you.
Okay, perfect. Yeah, thanks for having me today. So I come from a background of, I had my bachelor's of science in chemistry, and then I did my PhD actually at UC Davis in material science and engineering. So nice to get a little taste of what the weather is like. I remember it being quite rainy at this time of year. But I'm going to be talking today more about the specific research that I do. I work in Kester's group. It's called MST8, Material Science and Technology. And we focus a lot of our work more on nuclear energy and kind of like related materials problems within that. So I think if we go maybe to the next, yep, there we go. So we do a lot of our work primarily on light water reactor materials programs. In the lab that I work in, we focus more on nuclear fuels, so that's uranium-based fuels. And we do a lot of work. We get a lot of our funding from DOE, but we also, which is the Office of Nuclear Energy, we also do quite a bit of work with NASA. So we work on their nuclear thermal propulsion for their Mars missions, and we do quite a bit of testing, fabrication of new materials for fuels, also moderators and insulator type of materials. But we also work directly with industry quite a bit too. Same kind of emphasis there. We're either developing new materials, figuring out how to advance their current materials, either trying to make them safer, trying to make them last longer by modifying structures, and kind of like Kester mentioned previously, kind of looking at that material science tetrahedron. So how can we change either the chemistry or the structure, and how is that going to relate to our properties and to more advanced performance? We also get some of our funding from just internal, which is called LDRD. So that kind of allows us to focus more on more fundamental science. I think a lot of our other programs are much more like industry kind of focused. And so it's more focused on a deliverable for some sort of product. But we are able to also kind of get down into more fundamental research and R&D through programs like the LDRD, or also looking at DOE basic energy science. And then we also have quite a bit of collaborations with universities. I think some of our current ones are with UC Irvine, Oregon State, Rensselaer, Polytechnic Institute, to name a couple. And really, some of our focus is understanding this processing structure property relationships and how exactly does that affect the performance in the long run. And so there's been a lot of emphasis in the nuclear energy field on how to advance fuels and how to make them more accident tolerant. So if you do have a loss of coolant type of accident, then you have more time to respond to these kind of accidents. And so we do a lot of emphasis on oxide, carbide, and nitride ceramic materials. So if we go to the next slide, I have some examples of some of the property characterization that we do on many of the material types. So this graph that I'm showing here shows the thermal conductivity on a lot of different uranium compounds that we work on. We work on, as I mentioned, silicides, oxides, nitrides, carbides, and all of these obviously have a lot different behavior in terms of their thermal conductivity. And we really care about thermal conductivity, especially in the nuclear energy field, because essentially it's kind of almost a measure of how much stored energy you have at a given time, so that if you do lose coolant, if you have something with a low thermal conductivity, it's really difficult. It takes a really long time to essentially expel that heat, versus if it's very high, it can kind of release that heat really quickly. So we do a lot of measurements in order to determine what the thermal conductivity is, and we make a lot of different geometry samples, which I'm kind of showing on the right-hand side. We have to have these different geometries in order to kind of probe individual properties such as thermal expansion, thermal diffusivity, heat capacity, and we can use all this to calculate our thermal conductivities. But we also do a little bit of mechanical testing and also thermomechanical testing. And we can do a lot of these to temperatures greater than about 1,000 degrees Celsius, even 2,000 degrees Celsius. And we have also some furnaces and capabilities that can go up to about 2,800 degrees Celsius. And so, yeah, we do a lot of properties testing. And if you can go to the next slide, so we also do a lot of focus on microstructure modification. And so we do that by adding dopants. And so why exactly do you want to add dopants? Like I said, microstructural modification in a lot of cases, which is essentially just changing your grain sizes. And so by adding some of these dopants, such as chromium or aluminum, we can therefore change our grain sizes. And so some examples are shown kind of in the bottom, where essentially you can see, well, maybe you can't see too well, but the grain sizes essentially do double or triple in size by adding these dopants. We can also add other dopants in order to change the neutronic behavior in the reactor. And so essentially you want to be able to kind of limit reactivity at the beginning of life where things get really hot and can essentially be detrimental for long-term use in the reactor. And then if you go to the next slide, so this is my last slide here. We have actually done some previous collaborations with UC Davis in which we have had some analysis done by solid state nuclear magnetic resonance. So essentially what we have is a zirconium carbide insulator material. And these are typically going to really high temperatures under operation up to about 2800 degrees Celsius. And so we have tested them at these kind of extreme temperatures under hydrogen environments. And we essentially want to know what's happening. So we look at the properties, we measure the thermal diffusivity, but we also did these experiments using solid state nuclear magnetic resonance spectroscopy. And essentially what we see is just formation of hydride materials. And we can essentially relate that then back to some of the properties that we see and kind of make claims that essentially say, great, we have kind of more of a metallic behavior that we're seeing from the properties, which is also indicated in the spectroscopy measurements that we do. So I think with that, that's my last slide. And then I think just one more thing that I want to mention is that we fairly readily do have students in the lab. We've had many graduate students come out either for summers or even carry out part of their dissertation research at our lab. So we're always happy to have collaborations and students and postdocs in the lab. And that's all that I have. Thank you.
All right, I'm going to pass it off now to our student programs office. So Angelica, I will let you share about how students can get involved with LANL.
All right, let me share my screen. All right, you're able to see that okay?
We're not seeing anything.
Okay, 1 second, sorry about that.
I can talk about the question in the chat here for a moment while we're sharing. So there was a question about, is there opportunity to participate in research as a job or volunteer? So I think LANL for the most part is you have to actually have a job to be able to do most of the work here. I don't know of a lot of volunteer opportunities.
Yes, they have guest students and guest scientists, but that's still not.
Yeah, for the most part, that's still kind of an official capacity, even when you're here as a guest, if you're paid by the university or something instead. So for the most part, we try to bring students or others on as either a collaborator at a university or as a student in some capacity, or postdoc, or you hired on as staff at some level. And I think as Kester brought up, there's all sorts of ranges of how you can do that from high school all the way up through postdocs before you get hired on as staff. So we can see your screen now, Angelica.
Perfect. Sorry about that.
No problem.
Okay, so I'm going to talk a little bit more about what we do on our side in the student programs office. So my name is Angelica Lopez. I'm one of the program managers here in the office, and I oversee the high school internships specifically and our sponsored programs, but I also do a lot of the outreach. Okay, so here at LANL, we have one of the, I want to say, biggest internship programs in the DOE complex. We typically have 2,000 plus interns, and as mentioned earlier, those range from high school level to undergrad, grad, and then postgraduate levels. And we also have 2,000 mentors and 70 division student liaisons. So we have a lot of different support staff that help with the students when they're here on site. I won't read through all of this, but this is just a little bit about what we do in our office. So for students, we typically have professional development series in the summer. That's usually when we have the most students here on site, is during the summertime. And then we try to offer different year-round networking opportunities. So we do an annual symposium. We typically have about 200 students participate with that. And that's a poster session. So they're able to present the work that they're working on throughout the summer. We do an annual student mentor picnic. We have a director's talk, ice cream social, things like that. So we often get feedback from students that they want opportunities to socialize and network and meet with other students, meet with mentors, see what other opportunities there are throughout the lab. So we try to offer different events for them throughout the year. Students all go through an orientation, and more recently after COVID, we started doing our own orientation through our office, which is also another great way for students to meet other students right away from the start. So that's something that we offer at the start of their internships. We try to keep up with students by sending out newsletters of events that are coming up, deadlines, important information. And then on the mentor side, all of our mentors are required to take a training just to stay up to date with different mentor competencies. So those are sessions that our office runs. We do a nuts and bolts session for them, again, just to keep them up to date with what's going on, different mentoring tools, things like that. And then our office does a lot of outreach, specifically in the northern New Mexico region. We oftentimes have recruiters or specific, maybe scientists, engineers that will do more recruiting out of state. Our office typically sticks within state for the most part. So this is just to kind of give you an idea of what our numbers look like. In the past 10 years, 1,300 of our students were converted to regular staff. And then you can see here on the side what our stats look like this past summer. So at the peak of summer, we had close to 2,000 students here. 35% of our employees start out as a student. So we do have a pretty good pipeline, as mentioned earlier, that they could start all the way through high school. So oftentimes students will start in high school and then continue on through their undergrad, grad, so on and so forth, and then eventually get converted to staff. And that conversion rate right now is about 17%, but we are seeing the highest conversion rate is for our post-bac and our postmaster students, and those are at the 38 and 39% range. So we have internships at all levels, and these are mentor driven. So oftentimes students think that our office does the hiring. We kind of do a little bit more of the behind the scenes, I guess you could say. So our mentors, they are doing their own review of applications, their own interviews and hiring for whatever their research needs might be. All of our interns are paid. We have a pretty competitive salary structure that's on our external website, so students can look at that up front to kind of get an idea of what to expect. It's based off of their academics. So high school across the board has one salary structure, and then starting as undergrads, it varies between technical and non-technical roles. And that salary will increase as they increase in their education. So the more credit hours they have, the higher their salary. And students have the opportunity to be casual, part-time, or full-time. Sometimes we'll have students who will come in the summer for, say, a 10 or 12-week internship and then maybe come back during Christmas break. And so we keep them active in the system so that they're able to come back when they're able to. Depending on the group that they're working with, the type of work that they're doing, sometimes students will work remotely throughout the year. If they live in the area, they might just stay on full time. So there's a lot of different options for them depending on what works for them and what works for the group that they're in. And then, of course, our full and part-time interns are eligible for benefits and travel reimbursement. So that's a great opportunity. And then I just listed here where all of the job ads would be. So this link, I'll send the slides out, but when you have this link, it breaks it down by level. So whether it's high school, undergrad, master's level, and that's where students will be able to see what is available. For the most part, all of our groups post their own job ads for their needs. We have a couple of generic job ads that come through our office, and they're general. So it's not going to be specific to mechanical engineering or electrical engineering. It's just engineering as a whole. And anybody within the lab can go in and look at those applications. And so this just breaks down the different type of internships. One of the great things about LANL is I feel like there's an opportunity for everybody. So like I said, I work with mostly high school students, but in that area, a lot of times they think national lab, it's only going to be STEM related, but that's not the case. There's actually opportunities in many areas. So I listed here the different STEM fields. And then whether it's, research applied, there's a lot of opportunities there. But then this is also just a good idea of maybe some of the professional or administrative roles that you might find here. So whether it's finance, human resources, operations, we have a wellness center. So, we have personal trainers, things like that. So there's a big variety of different backgrounds that can find an opportunity here at the lab. We also have a variety of summer schools. Those are typically 10 weeks on site. Again, those are all paid experiences, and they work more in like a cohort style. And so they're going to work really closely with those mentors that they have. And I don't think I mentioned, every student has 2 mentors. So they have a main mentor and a co-mentor who work closely with them throughout their internship. So they're getting a lot of support to make sure that they have what they need while they're here. This is a list of a variety of summer schools that we have. Again, you'll have the links to kind of go through them. I think some of these may have been mentioned. But again, lots of opportunities when it comes to having students here on site in a variety of different ways to get an internship or experience here. I think I skipped a slide or it didn't show it. There was a slide here. I'm not sure why it's not showing it. It was on our sponsored programs. That's something else that I oversee. And though, as mentioned earlier, there's those externally funded programs. So there's a couple of specific ones that come through our office. There's a lot of them, but they don't all necessarily come through student programs. And those are opportunities, same thing, that might be a 10-week internship in the summer that have their own deliverables to meet the program requirements, but those will come with external funding. We have a couple of fellowship opportunities that I oversee, and those will come with a paid graduate school. So lots of options, as I mentioned, for students to come into our office and to find different supports to get opportunities here. So I'll send out these slides so that you guys have all of the links, and then our email addresses are here. So you can share these with students so that they can contact us if they have questions.
All right. Thank you, Angelica. All right, so our last speaker is on our postdoc programs. So Antonio, if you are on, feel free to share, and then we'll open it up to questions from anybody on any of the things we've covered.
See if I can share my slides. You guys see that?
Yes, we can see it.
Bigger looking. Okay, it's not. Sorry, it's giving me an error here on my end.
I leave mine in normal mode, so you might want to go back to
Okay. Okay, now my whole screen has gone black. Let's see. Goodness. All right. Sorry, my whole thing has just. All right, it's not working. I'm going to stop sharing for just a sec. There we go. All right. Now we're just going to share normally. There we go. All right, sorry about that. Okay, so my name is Antonia Sanders, and I run the postdoc program here at LANL. As I heard Kester discuss, and apparently others might have as well. I love this quote from Oppenheimer: "If I could find a way to combine physics and New Mexico, life would be perfect." I know that life is beautiful in California, but it's also beautiful here, and I would encourage you to check it out. All right, so the postdoc program really tries to recruit and retain technical talent from around the world, to bring in new ideas for innovation and excellence. We want to establish future leaders, and we accelerate knowledge transfer. So people who may be retiring from the lab, we want them to share their knowledge with new and upcoming staff. We do get a question as to why would I want to do a postdoc? Because why can't you just get a real job after you graduate? So really a postdoc is more of an educational opportunity. It gives you the chance to sort of explore different fields, really develop your professional network, figure out where you want to be. So I think a lot of grad students don't know where they want to land. And a postdoc really gives you that opportunity to explore different research. So you can do actually more than one postdoc, and you can do more than one postdoc here. So if you find another research project that looks interesting, you can go do 2 years in one project and then do another 2 years with another project. We do have different appointments. Kester mentioned this briefly. Most of our postdocs are research associates, which means they're funded directly from their mentors' funding pool. And that is either programmatic or often LDRD, which is our laboratory directed research and development. So that has a little more grassroots basic science feel. We then have a number of fellowships, and then we have distinguished fellowships. And these are all based on your kind of science. All right, then within our office, we do a lot of career development. So you would come here and you do, obviously work in a lab with a mentor or two. And then the postdoc office provides workshops, consultations, different non-technical mentoring. We also have annual events. I don't know how many of you guys have done like a thesis in 3, but we do science in 3, which is a research slam. There's a local competition, a regional competition, and a national competition amongst all the other DOE national labs. We also have opportunities to do entrepreneurial accelerator that works with our tech transfer organization, and postdocs get about 6 months to really develop an interesting technology, and they meet with investors and you work on a business plan. And we've actually had a number of our postdocs that end up spinning off and starting their own new business after leaving LANL. We have a variety of awards and prizes. We do various things during Postdoc Appreciation Week, which is in September. So we have social events as well that really just helps bring the community together. Here's a little bit more information on the Postdoc Accelerator. It is a collaboration with the University of California. So people then do a couple trips, like a trip to California to meet with investors, and then also a trip to New York. We have a postdoc association, so that helps keep our postdocs lively. It's a good opportunity to get to know other postdocs from around the institution. We have over 500 postdocs, and sometimes you can feel a little isolated in your lab and in your team. And so this is an opportunity to meet other postdocs and do some social activities. They also do a technical seminar series every other week for other postdocs and other staff. I wanted to go over what kind of people typically we have as postdocs. So this is our field of study. Obviously, there's lots of engineers and lots of physicists, but we have, plenty of material science scientists, chemists, bioscience, astronomy, which is, and math and computer science. You are eligible to apply for a postdoc if you have completed all your PhD requirements by your LANL hire date. So if you are currently a grad student and you're looking at graduating next year, you can apply now. And you just have to have official transcripts that say that you have completed all of your PhD requirements before you walk in the door. And then even after your PhD is attained, if you go do a postdoc somewhere else and then you're still interested in coming to LANL, you can start a postdoc here as long as you've graduated within the last 5 years. A slight majority of our postdocs are US citizens. We have quite a number of foreign nationals. So if you are not a US citizen, that does not exclude you from working here. So we would encourage your applications. I think a lot of people want to know, like, okay, so I do a postdoc at LANL and then what? So this is just an example of where people went last year and sort of the 3-year average. Last year budgets were a little weird, so it was kind of a low conversion rate year. But if you look at the 3-year average, about 44% of our postdocs convert to staff. 21% move on to another science and tech position, and that includes industry and other national labs. Some postdocs, unfortunately, we just don't know where they went. A number go into academic positions, either as a professor, assistant professor, or a researcher. Some people do an additional postdoc. Most of our additional postdocs end up getting a fellowship to do a second postdoc. And then, as I mentioned, a few people do entrepreneurial spinoffs. Angelica mentioned that a number of our students end up converting to staff, but also, obviously, a number of our postdocs end up converting to staff as well. So 70% of our early career PhD level technical staff did start their career at LANL as a postdoc. So to apply, if you go to our jobs.lanl.gov, we have specific ads on the website. Those are actually really great because that is an actual mentor who has money, who's looking actively for a postdoc. If none of those quite seem exciting to you, talk to your thesis advisors about their networks. You can look at the LANL website and look for relevant research and contacts. A lot of our mentors go to conferences like they prefer Little Gordon conferences or things that are more specific to their technical field. But we do have people that go to like APS and ACS and AGU every year. So you can always find LANL at those things. Probably one of the least successful is, cold calling or emailing a LANL scientist. But if you do that, explain how you can help their research. Not that, hey, I'm looking for a job. You need to make it a little more personal for them. How to apply. So you complete a nomination. So you would actually write up a 1-page research proposal in coordination with the mentor. You need recommendation letters, a CV, and transcripts. And your mentor would actually help you through this process because they have to submit it into our system. We do pay quite well. I think a lot of our postdocs like our salary structure. So we start at $97,000 and just go up. And it is based on your years of experience past PhD. So if you graduated in 2021, you get more money than if you graduated just recently. We do have a lot of questions. We do not sponsor green cards and citizenship, but we do sponsor visas. So if you are a foreign national and you need a visa, that's not a problem for us. How do I apply for a fellowship? If you have a mentor who wants to hire you, then you and that mentor will complete a fellowship application. And then we do this question quite a lot. It depends on how long does it take to get an offer from LANL. It can be everywhere from a week to 3 to 6 months, depending on what the applicant pool is and what the source of funding is from the mentor. Thank you. If you have any questions, please email postdocprogram@lanl.gov. Thanks.
Thank you. We have maybe 5 minutes for questions. So if anyone wants to put your questions in the chat box or raise your hand, I'm happy to call out. I was interested in, as we wait for people, I was looking at the summer schools, and I just wanted to clarify, are those specifically for undergraduate students? And what is the process, like where can students find more information to apply for that? I don't know if
Angelica, you want to talk, or I can talk some. We have a summer school through the Engineering Institute, so I can talk about ours, which is Los Alamos Dynamic Summer School. And it's usually for juniors, seniors, and then graduate students. So for the most part, it's kind of the some of the younger graduate students. And there's a website that you can apply to for that one in particular. So each summer school kind of has their own application process. And they're usually more of a upper level undergraduates and then lower level graduate students. And each one kind of has an own specific process of how to apply and funding levels.
I think we promoted the dynamic summer school, the LADS program.
LADS.
Yes, I think we promoted that on campus. Hopefully you get
And
some
I know
students.
the robotics one is usually just for people finishing their junior year of undergraduate. So each one is kind of specific, but they're all usually about that age range from what I remember.
Questions from our audience? Don't be shy. If you don't want to be on the microphone, you can just type up your question. I'll ask another question. I know that one of the ways that our investigators tend to collaborate with national lab peers is through LDRD opportunities. And I just wanted to see if you could maybe elaborate a little bit more about the Los Alamos LDRD program, and when would you recommend people start reaching out to colleagues? What's usually the timeline for those types of programs?
Yeah, I don't know if Kester or Scarlett, if you want to take that one, but there's lots of different LDRD programs and the timeline kind of ranges throughout the year. So which one is probably easiest for university? That's a good question. So does anybody else want to take that one for materials?
Yeah.
Go ahead, Scarlett.
Kester, go ahead. Oh,
Either way, go ahead.
yeah. I'm sorry. So I think that it kind of depends. We have a couple of different calls throughout the year, but I think that some of our bigger funding pots, usually the official call comes out like in January, but at that point you are given like a month to get in a pre-proposal. So really you should be reaching out, if you want to kind of get some of those started, probably at least discussions, I would say in October, really at the latest. But then we also have some calls that come out in summertime. But again, I would give it at least a couple months before those come out. So I think really anytime you can start the discussion. And if you miss the deadline, there's always next year. Kester, sorry to cut you off.
Oh, no problem. I was going to basically say the same things. So yeah, I mean, I think that LDRD is laboratory directed research and development. And so that's basically an internal proposal call. So most of the funds are internal, but they can be used to support students at universities, and we can do subcontracts. So figuring out partners who would be the lead PIs on the proposals and then sort of setting stuff up is one way to interact with the laboratory. You can also write external proposals. There are some DOE proposals and things that that LANL staff can participate in, and then there are also some LANL staff that have joint appointments at universities, so they could probably also write proposals for things like NSF and stuff like that too. So it really varies and it's very situational. LDRD does have a cycle, like Scarlett said, that with the the sort of DRs, which is directed research, happening earliest, and those are coming up pretty soon here. It'd be pretty difficult to put something together, I think, at this point. I think they want ideas in the next month or so. And then there's 5 or 6 different categories that sort of have calls that go out throughout the spring, and then they announce them essentially in August or September. So that's kind of the cycle for LDRD.
So something to keep an eye on. So we're at time. I want to thank everyone who joined us from UC Davis and to our speakers. I learned a lot. I think there's a lot of resources, particularly for our students, graduate students, postdocs, and lots of opportunities to connect with colleagues in the different research departments. And I think my team will be following up with Holly to see if we can have more of these, maybe more targeted conversations around specific programs and research areas. For those of you who joined us from UC Davis, again, thank you for spending some of your afternoon and lunchtime with us. We recorded this session, and I think some of our friends from LANL are going to share their slides. If we can help you make a connection to an investigator, a program manager, or information with our colleagues at the lab, please don't hesitate to reach out to our team, and we'll be happy to facilitate that conversation. And I don't know if anyone has any closing words from our lab friends side.
No, just thanks for the opportunity.
Thank
I have
you.
one quick thing.
Yeah.
We actually announced it went through the vice chancellors of research of the UC system that we now have a new call for directors fellowship
Yes.
postdocs. So that just came out, I think, this morning. So keep an eye out for that, and we'd love to see applications from any UC Davis students.
Absolutely. We will be promoting that on campus too. Thank you,
Thank you.
Antonia. Well, thank you, everyone. Nice of you to join us. Have a great rest of your week. If you are in California, drive safe and stay dry. And we'll see you next time. Bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.